Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeevan Acharya. I'm the Principal Energy Specialist at ADB. I mostly work in South Asia region, but I'm also the core track chair for this transmission and distribution thematic track. My another co-chair is Matthew. He's from UNSCAP, but unfortunately he has to attend another meetings, so you'll not be able to join this one, but we prepare this thematic track together. Since this is our first track in the transmission and distribution theme, I wanted to run you through what is the objective of why we are putting this thematic track this time, and then how how we have planned various sessions, so that will be easier for you to see why we are doing it like this. You know, this is our 19th Asia Clean Energy Forum. And then if you look at in the previous one, we usually didn't have this transmission and distribution. But whereas, you know, most of our executing and implementing agencies and also our government counterparts, our projects are all related, most of them are related to transmission, distribution, and of course, generation there. Generation, because we focus on renewables, is always covered, but then we talk about finance, we talk about smart grid, we talk about this, we talk about this. But this transmission and distribution is such a core part of our clean energy transition, but then we always kind of miss this out. So then we receive a lot of feedback from many of our participants and also our well-wishers that we should also focus on that one, because that's so close to our heart in terms of what we do on a day-to-day basis in the countries there. So that's why we have, you know, organized this special track on the transmission and the distribution. And within transmission and distribution, of course, there are various aspects of it, which we'll try to cover it in their 4 sessions. So again, we have various sessions on this for our these 4 sessions. As I said, 2 will be here today, and the other one will be on the 5th there. And then the way we'll plan to do this one is that we'll have a opening plenary for opening session for about 5 minutes, and then probably I already took more than that. And then presentations will be from each of these panels, and we'll have a Q&A with the panelists, and then we'll open the floor for any Q&A and so on. So this is a standard format that we plan to adopt in all of our sessions as well. So with that brief introduction, again, I also want to remind you that this will be recorded, and then please mute your phones so that it will not disturb others, and others will not disturb you also. And then if you have any questions and so on, feel free to raise it during the Q&A session as well. So with that, let me start with our first speaker, and then I'm very privileged to invite my very near and dear friend, Sajid Raja. He is a senior financial management specialist, and he is also very much involved in many of our projects, especially doing the financial management assessments, also governance side of it. And then I was asking him, what should I say? How do I introduce you? And then one thing what he said is that if there is no money, nothing happens. So let's hear from the financial specialist first. So Sajid, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jeevan. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sajid. I am the Senior Financial Management Specialist with ADB. So as Jeevan mentioned that in each session, there will be one ADB person, so you can challenge that. But surprise, in this session, you got the accountant, so I can still get away by saying that, you know, if you ask so many technical things, then I'm sorry, I'm just an accountant. Never mind. So yeah, so let's start with this session. So we look at the governance first. So as you know, I mean, in today's challenging environment and the changing world, like where we have this, you know, governments are committing to the net zero, you know, commitments. There are ESG considerations getting more and more central stage. as well as the consumers are becoming more and more ethically aware. So all these things, the governance itself, it takes the fiduciary as well as the financial governance. It becomes all the more important in the current world. So from this is where, in governance, a robust governance system that will ensure that the energy SOEs and the energy companies, they remain competitive as well as sustainable. So with that, let's look at the first slide. You will see there are various elements that actually shape up the governance in the energy sector. So first of all, there is the policy and legislation. It has to be a clear and a comprehensive policies and regulation legislation in place, which will essentially support or create enabling environment for sustainable investments. Instead of creating bottlenecks or hindrances, the policy and the legislation should be supportive of maximizing the sustainable investments. Likewise, flowing from the policy and legislation, then there needs to be a robust and independent regulatory mechanism in place. And similarly, then there is, at the SOE level particularly, then there are fiduciary responsibilities for those who have the governance responsibilities at the SOE's level, whether it's a board or whether it's any other organizational setup, as well as the management of the state-owned enterprises. And then transparency and accountability, that's also very important. Whatever we are doing, it should be in a transparent and manner. And the accountability is robust enough to ensure that everything goes according to the plan and there is appropriate checks and balances in place. Human resource, another, is a very important element. Apart from the fiduciary side, also at the every level, human resource is equally important, both from the quality as well as from the quantity perspective. And lastly, of course, all these elements, they feed into the risk management. There should be a robust risk management system in place, which will ensure that risks are properly identified and appropriately mitigated or addressed. So I come straight to the challenges and how they could be managed as well. So first of all is policy and legislation, as I mentioned, that the clear and complete comprehensive legislation is very important. In a lot of countries, we see that the policies or the legislation are very complex, and you have different places, or they're scattered in different places. Like, for example, renewable energy, it is not maybe embedded into the mainstream policies and legislations. Similarly, a lot of sometimes so much complexity is there that it creates a lot of bottlenecks, particularly from the private sector investments point of view. There are lots of challenges there. And likewise, these policies, they have their impacts on the regulators as well. But again, I mean, from the regulatory point of view, independence is all the more important. In a lot of countries, we see that the legislation is in place, and that allow or that necessitate existence of an regulator, independent regulator. But frankly speaking, unfortunately, I mean, in most of the cases, the regulators are controlled, at least to say the least, I would say. So that is what happens then, is then their independent functionality and what they were supposed to be doing is not entirely executed. And that results into a lot of challenges, like, there may not be timely tariff determinations, there may not be other, regulatory steps, which overall affect the financial sustainability of the sector. Then decision making, of course, I mean, that is another thing which is very important. And I discussed about the fiduciary responsibilities, and this is where it's also one of the most important things, that decision making, there should be, first of all, the long-term perspective, and it should be free from any biases, whether personal or whether political level. Of course, I mean, we know that in a lot of cases, the SOEs are still under heavily influenced by the political governments, and then of course the decision making is also sometimes um, governed by the the short term political gains, the short term political preferences. So this is where again, I mean, the decision making should be robust enough, and it should be looking at the long term perspective for the better of the sector as well as the public at large. Procurement again is very important because if it is not done in a transparent manner and a competitive manner, then not only it will have the financial consequences, you may end up getting into the higher costs than what should have been there, but also there is a very serious reputational risks as well, as we see that in a lot of times the procurements become mega scandals as well. So and then tariff I would say is the elephant in the room. Of course, I mean it's a very sensitive topic as well. All of us are of course consumers as well, but and nobody likes to pay higher bills. But again, I mean that is one thing, and in most of the cases, it's the single largest factor that actually contributes to the grave financial situation of many SOEs in many countries. So again, I mean, cost reflective, that's the first thing for the tariffs. And then of course, the proper execution should also be there. There should be efficient billing as well as the recovery mechanisms, and again, free from political biases as well. Then there is dispatch, considerations, and again, I mean, a lot of time now, and especially these days, we hear this debate going on in a lot of countries that the take or pay agreements, for example, that maybe the all that was there more than the capacity that the required demand. So then how to balance between the merit-based dispatches as well as the to avoid the capacity payment charges. So that's again long-term planning and effective execution comes into play here, that will ensure that the generation as well as the transmission and distribution investments are well aligned and well coherent. Human resource, again, this is one area which is actually a double-edged sword. And on one side, we see in a lot of SOEs they are constrained to especially to maintain the quality human resource because of the limited financial resources. And on the other hand, sometimes they are overly staffed as well because of again different reason, political being the more prevalent. Lastly, accountability, and accountability covers both the financial reporting as well as the accounting and auditing side of that. So since we are already out of time, so I would just quickly take you through how ADB is actually, all of you I'm sure would be aware that ADB provides financing for investment projects, but on top of that, what we call Finance Plus or value addition. So we also help in policy reforms. For example, recently we are doing policy-based lending in Sri Lanka, in India, as well as in Uzbekistan. Fixed assets management from financial governance point of view is very important because it's directly linked to your tariff determination. In a lot of cases, ADB is also supporting improving the fixed asset management. Then the financial reporting we support through different technical assistance or through the projects themselves to improve the financial reporting, and most importantly, the timely submission of the entity financial statements. Similarly, we also working on different projects like in Assam and Maldives. We are supporting the PPP components as well, whereby ADB is providing sovereign funding to increase or enhance the bankability of the projects. Then we also work quite extensively on the financial restructuring plans with different SOEs that ranges from a whole lot of initiatives there. And lastly, technological solutions like the smart metering that improves your billing efficiency as well as the collection efficiency. So I would stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sajid. Really appreciate. Now, without wasting time, so I would like to invite our second speaker. We have 6 speakers, so one is done. So now let's move on to the second one. Dr. Pirapat is from DNV. So I would like to request him to make his presentation, please.
Thank you. Happy to be participate in these sessions on the transmission and distributions. Today, I'm just going to talk about the role of electricity grid and how it will play to achieve the decarbonizations with a focus on cross-border power, cross-border interconnections. Although there will be many sessions, but I just want to touch on that with the recent studies that we did in Southeast Asia. Just want to start off, you probably heard that this morning as well, that the electrifications, the increased electrifications and the use of electricity, the increase in demand will be the mainstream of energy transitions. Based on the energy transition outlook that we did, we expect that the demand will more than double between now until 2050. And of course, the majority of that will come from renewables. Wind and solar will account for 70% of the generation mix going forward. And of course, with the increasing share, the large amount of wind and solar, there's a need for flexibility that will be required to accommodate the wind and solar. And electricity grid, along with other resources such as storage, will play a key role, particularly the cross-border interconnections. A couple of years ago, the DNV did an insight study report to survey with the stakeholders in transmission and distributions industry. And this involved both public and private in terms of what do they view in terms of the power grids. And the majority, as you can see on this graph, showing that majority believe that there's an urgent need for grid investment because the current infrastructure will not be able to accommodate the increasing share of the renewables. It cannot connect renewables from the source to the demand center. And we have heard that this morning in the plenary sessions, in the introductory video, as well as in the discussions, that there's a need for the grid investment and also to upgrade the existing grid as well in order to accommodate the growing share of wind and solar and also to achieve decarbonization. This report can be found on the DNV website if you like. One of the major challenges that has been highlighted is the governance, the uncertainties in the policy and regulatory frameworks that play a role and has been highlighted by Jivan as well as the report that done by the IEA late last year. That's looking the role, the important electricity grid to support decarbonization. In addition to electricity grid, of course, there are other flexibility resources which are shown on this slide, which I'm not going to go details. One on electricity grid, both domestic and cross-border, as well as all the other components like the fact device, the way that you operate and monitor the grid, like demand dynamic line ratings. And another one is the generations, because generations, not only the conventional but also wind has been shown that they can provide response to the system in the form of, for example, synthetic inertia or inertia-based fast frequency response. And another one is, of course, the storage batteries that can provide a short-term storage, but then when you have a lot of renewables, then you need a longer-term storage. That's where the pump hydros, and of course, another one is being discussed a lot is about hydrogens, which can be used for long-term storage ranging from months to season to year. And demand response is another one that can help to accommodate the variability and uncertainty from wind and solar. That's coming from load shifting. Now, I just want to touch on the study that we did just to highlight the role. What are the benefits of regional interconnections and how do they support renewables integrations and how do they support the achievement of decarbonizations? So we did a white paper study that looking at the ASEAN cross-border interconnectors and what benefits that they can provide, comparing if you don't go on with the cross-border interconnections. So this is just a highlight on the grid. We note that we remove some of the constraints, but we just want to highlight what are the potential benefits. These are the the figures that show in our report on your left is the size of the interconnections, including also the pipeline as well for hydrogen. We can see that the countries in Southeast Asia, the one that will rely on import are the one including Vietnam, part of Indonesia like Java, Bali, and Singapore, because of the resource and the limited situation that they're facing. Our report also highlight that the regional cooperations between all the ASEAN member states can save in terms of the investments in generation in each individual countries, rather than investing all of the solar capacity individually without depending on other regions. It will save amount of solar capacity to be installed by up to 600 gigawatt. And that's also applied for electricity storage as well as hydrogen storage as well. That for electricity storage, the batteries can save up to 1.2 terawatt hour. And of course, that will have impact on the physical footprint because you don't need to build all of this capacity if you have the cross-border interconnections. The only requirement is that there, of course, will be the additional grid infrastructure in the length of 3.7 million kilometers. And that's including both the overhead line as well as the underground, as well as the subsea cable in the form of HVAC and HVDC. So there are significant benefits, and that can translate to the economic benefits, as you see on this slide, that we compare the case on your left-hand side, showing that those are the ones that without new cross-border interconnections, comparing to the one to your right-hand side, and those are with where all the countries in Southeast Asia contribute in regional corporations, go towards the ASEAN power grid. The cost saving is in the range of 800 billion US dollars. And where does those cost savings come from? Come from without having to invest in the capacity, solar capacity, storage capacity. But of course, there's increase in cost of the transmission infrastructure that you need to compensate. And of course, there's other than economic benefits and environmental benefits, there are also energy security benefits as well, because of the sharing of resources between the systems. As the system get larger, it can have balance in terms of the reserve and also sharing the resource. And of course, it can smooth out the variability and uncertainty that coming from wind and solar going forward. For more details, you can download the report, which is open from the link that I provide. Our report also highlighting, of course, there are challenges in developing the power grid. And this not only applicable to cross-border, but also can be applicable to domestic as well. Because we did a survey with the different stakeholders in terms of finding what are the challenges that they face. Technical, financial, economics are challenges, but the one that are most challenging is probably coming from the governance and policy and regulatory frameworks. Because in Southeast Asia, there are diverse sets of policies and market structure that need to be sorted out in fully develop the ASEAN power grid. And now we've seen that there's still uncertainty and of the political will, and of course the institution arrangements. And another one which has been highlighted is the lengthy regulatory process in getting permits and approval. And we provide the action plans that for stakeholders to consider, separate into 3 categories. The first one is coordinate and harmonize the regional policy framework. The second one is on addressing financial risk and uncertainty to unlock investment in the grid infrastructure. And the third one is about secure supply chain and resource development in Southeast Asia. And we provide these action plans ranging from what you can do now, going to the midterm, and going to the long terms. And of course, don't have time to go into details, but you can refer to the report for more details of our study. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pirapat. Now I have the pleasure to invite my another very close friend from Sri Lanka, Tharindu De Silva. Where are you? Okay, you are there. So please, he works in the Lanka Electricity Company. We call it LECO for his presentation. By the way, he plays a very good guitar also.
Thank you, Jeevan. Thanks for that good introduction. Let's. Okay, here you go. Right. Good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And government has an ambitious target of achieving the net zero by 2050. So also we have also a target to achieve the 20% of renewable energy penetration by 2030. So government targets to achieve the economic prosperity as well as the economic transformation along with the energy transition so that no one is left behind. So our long-term generation plan targets to have around 160 megawatts of rooftop solar each and every year. So we have a huge challenge as discussed, how to get these 160 megawatt each and every year. So how we are targeting it, right? So far, we have been able to target around 800 or 900 megawatts of rooftop solar into our network. Starting from 2016, 50 to 900 megawatt would be a sort of a massive target for us by then. But fortunately, we were capable enough to deliver that target of having 1,000 megawatts by 2025. So this is sort of a reminiscence of from my last appearance in Clean Energy Forum back in 2018. I had this slide of, with a target of having 1,000 megawatts by 2025. Now we are on right track. So we paid around 14 US cents by that time. It was a two-tier tariff system, and the rest of the 10 years we got 10 US for the rooftop feed-in tariff, but now it is around 12 US cents flat tariff for the 20 years. And also we have additionally add another scheme to expedite the rooftop penetration so that you can exceed the demand of contract. It says a net plus extra, where you can connect a separate dedicated meter for your generation if your rooftop or the roof space permits. And we have anticipated, or not particularly we, the EPRI had anticipated lots of technical issues or the negative impacts in rooftop distribution. So like voltage, and we'll have loading, certain loading thermal loading criteria, also as well as the protection issues and the power quality issues. But so far, we have only seen the voltage issue in our 1,000 megawatt ambitious target. So we will see certain other aspects in time to come, probably in next couple of decades, where our next target is to have another 1,000 by within 10 years time. So we'll be facing these challenges and how we are going to move ahead. So currently we have certain feeders or certain grid substation with hosting capacity issues. Certain grids are so certain grids are saturated with renewables. Also, we have seen certain disparities in investments. We have the generation and always the transmission get more attraction for the development banks, say, than the distribution network. So, but from my understanding, the distribution network is the lowest hanging fruit that you can tap in terms of adding more renewable energy resources into the network, because it is the where we consume. And also, we have an aging infrastructure, so that in our region, we have to have a sort of a state-of-art infrastructure. If you have to replace the same conventional infrastructure for the next couple of decades, would not work. So that we have to have a sort of a state-of-art infrastructure to get more renewable energy into our distribution network. But last not least, the manually managed operated network. So we're talking about advanced distribution management systems, remote switching, optimal switching from long back, but so far we were not able to deploy this system at large scale or full rollout are yet to be seen. So as development banks, we can think about what are the anticipated solutions. So probably our traditional planning approaches has to be revisited, where than just having just a normal single-sided planning. You have to have a sort of a probabilistic planning and also integrated planning as well. It's just not top to bottom or bottom-up approaches, where we have to have all the planning together, like a circular thing, like starting from generation, transmission, and then distribution, the demand side, all the resource planning, again back to the generation cycle as well. So integrated planning as well as probabilistic planning is a must in future distribution networks and transmission network planning. And also, we do have certain requirements of capacity expansion, and network should be digitalized. So the self-healing network, much reliable network infrastructure is in place for us to get more renewable into our network. And also, we have to attract certain business modalities like aggregated roof solar systems, virtual power plants, or demand response schemes, so that distribution network itself got an immense capacity of adding more renewability to the network, so that the network the inherent qualities of the renewable means like intermittency and all other properties would not be impact the day-to-day life of the people. And also we have to have a sort of a rapid uptake of batteries. And with the uptake of batteries, we have a sort of a microgrid to introduce certain innovative business models so that we can deliver individual reliability services to each and every people that it wants, not the entire grid, so that there will be certain high reliable areas as well as low reliable areas, so that we have to categorize and deliver the service in individual basis. And also, so I hope I manage using the time. So let's make our distribution grid as a platform which foster the innovation as well as the opportunities for the energy transition, not in just energy transition, but just energy transition. So let's see how it goes. Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking us through that one very quickly. So now I have also the pleasure to invite our dear friend also from Bangladesh, from a lot of experience on the transmission side of it. So Mr. Mohiuddin Ahmad to talk about, to bring in the Bangladesh perspective, please.
Thank you, Mr. Jiban Acharya, and uh, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to give my presentation on PGCV forward thinking approach to transmission, transforming the transmission grid. So our population is 169 million people. So our per capita electricity consumption is 602 kilowatt hour. Our structure of Bangladesh power sector, a power division, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Power, Energy, Mineral Resources, Power Division is under the Power Division. All of the electricity entities under that. So Power Cell, Bangladesh Energy Regulatory Commission, and 9 generation company, and 1 single transmission company, Power Grid Company, Bangladesh Limited, and 6 distribution company are under the Power Division. Major activities of PGCB is the operation and maintenance of grid substation and transmission line, load dispatch, and also the transmission network planning, development project implementation, and optical fiber leasing also doing by Power Grid Company Bangladesh Limited. This is the power system at a glance. At present, this is the May 2024. Generation capacity is 27 gigawatt. Grid capacity is 68,324 MVA. Distribution capacity, dispatch capacity 31,786 megawatt. Transmission line 15,000 circuit kilometer, and our access to electricity is 100%. Installed capacity of generation by May 2004, according to type of the generation, our total capacity is 27 gigawatt. Out of this, natural gas is 43.9%, and HFO 22.3%, HHD 2.3%, coal 18.8%, hydro 0.85%, on-grid solar is 1.9%, and power import is 9.8%. Interconnection between Bangladesh and India. Radial connection of generator. We are importing power from Adani Power. It is radially connected to our grid. So it is total capacity is 1600 megawatt. And we have also two asynchronous connection with India. One is the HVDC 1 block 1. We are importing 500 megawatt, and another one is HVDC block 2. We are importing 500 megawatt. And one radial connection of load. It is connected to the India grid. it is 160 to 180 megawatt capacity, and total capacity of importing power from India is to 2,656 megawatt. This is the last 15 years, from the 2009 to 2024, if you see the rapid growth of the generation. So from 4,295 megawatt to now, which is demand is 60,477, and installed capacity from 5,800 to 27 gigawatt. This is the demand forecast and generation plan as per our integrated energy power and master plan. You can see that in the 2003, our forecasted demand is 16.4, and our generation capacity is 26 gigawatt. 2026, our generation capacity will be increased to 37 gigawatt, and 2030 it will be 39, 2035 it will be 54, 2041 it will be 74, and 2051 the generation capacity will be 111 gigawatt. Renewable power plants existing and under construction of LOI issued and proposed as of May 2024. If you see the Bangladesh map, you can see easily that there are all the BRE plants are all over the country. It is decentralized. So in operation now, 12 BRE plants is working. The generation capacity is 594. Under construction, 13. Generation capacity is 509 megawatt. Negotiation completed, 47. Capacity is 4,594 megawatt. Under technical review, 30 plants. Capacity is 3,756 megawatt. Proposed or tendering is 21. Its capacity will be 3,094. As a total, the number of plants will be 123, and total capacity will be 12.17 gigawatt. Year-wise solar penetration, if you can see that in the year at present 2004, that is, we will add the, in this year we add 509 megawatt, and it will be increased from 594 to 1,103 megawatt. In the year 2025, the solar penetration will be 2,000. In that year 2023, the total will be 3,739. And in that year 2027, it will be 4,709. Year 2088, it will be goes to 8,885. And in the year 2029, it will go to 9,887. And in the year 2023, it will go to 12 gigawatt. So I think we just show what will be our scenario in the year 2026, 2028, 2023, 2030. 2026, in comparison with the total generation, the total dispatch, our dispatch from VRE will be 18%, and in the year 2028, total, according to our total dispatch, it will be 38%, and in the year 2030, it will be 45%. This is the BRE and others transmission is now a very challenge for PGCB. That's why we have taken some initiative. So PGCB present initiative to transforming the transmission grids. We have already regional connectivity using back-to-back HVDC since 2013. Introduction of HTS, a high temperature, low sag conductor for increase the capacity of the transmission line. Introduction of STATCOM, SBC, and Swiss Sun capacitor to improve dynamic reactive power management capability, and upgradation of the country's transmission voltage level to ultra voltage level 765 kV. We have already installed one simulation plan, another financial GIJ, grid studies and innovation facility with assistance from GIJ to study the next generation transmission and grid. Our next generation transmission plan we are doing under this software and others. So upgradation and modernization of NLDC and LDC with advanced cyber security, SCADA, and all and AI-based EMS. I'm very much thankful to ADB that ADB is going to finance these products. centralization, renewable energy management, center to monitor and manage VRE generation efficiently. We are doing this. Also, we have already introduced introduction of unmanned aerial vehicle drone in monitoring of and maintenance of transmission line. Installation of cyber secure PMU phase measurement unit and AI-based wide area monitoring system, one system. And for the VRE plan, introduction of battery energy storage system with solar power plant. And we are also going to human research development to manage the next generation grid. Thank you very much. On time. Oh, on time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Ahmed, for finishing your presentation, taking us through a lot of information in a short time given to you. So now let me invite Sandhya Sundara Raghavan. She's from the World Resources Institute in India, please.
Hi, a very good afternoon to all of you. Today I'll be taking a few steps back. I'd like to talk about role of integrated resource planning in clean energy transition. We'll quickly touch upon a few things, right? What is IRP? Why IRP? The couple of modeling approaches, how it has evolved in multiple countries, what can we learn from other countries, and finally the way forward. Now, what is IRP, right? It's an approach that meets the long-term requirements at least cost service. It needs to take into account equity, reliability, environmental considerations, affordability, to harness new technologies, to ensure that there is accurate supply and demand forecasting, needs to have plans, processes, so whole lot of things, but that's the whole idea of IRP, and I think my fellow colleagues also mentioned about the importance of IRP. So in simple language, like layman's language, what can IRP actually address, right? It basically helps in understanding whether to build new generation assets, whether to purchase energy from other generators, whether to purchase from markets, whether to invest in energy efficiency, demand side programs to reduce the projected demand. What is that grid configuration, both in terms of transmission as well as the distribution sector, which will be adequate to meet the supply and demand. And finally, when we go at the granular level, how should these power plants be dispatched in an optimum way? So IRP actually helps in setting the long-term vision for a state and helps in, helps basically the utility to evaluate and communicate what are those potential strategies for delivering reliable supply at the lowest system-wide cost over a specified number of years. So there are different modeling approaches, and when we speak about different models and tools, I think the first thing is, what is a research question, right? What are we trying to answer? So some of those questions are, what balancing options are there to manage the increasing demand? And some of the things that my colleagues also mentioned, what is that flexible resource? Is it battery storage? Is it pumped hydro? Is it green hydrogen? Which power plants need to be dispatched at what point of time? How much should your existing thermal power plants be ramped up and down, right? And which hours of the year will the system actually experience contingencies in your network? And there are various models, right, which are out there. So I would like to categorize them into 4 main categories. First, towards your right, capacity expansion model. That actually helps in understanding what are the investments on the generation and the transmission side over a long period of time, right? Second is production cost model, also popularly known as dispatch model, right? Which actually helps in understanding what will be the impact on system operational cost, right? And it's 15 minutes, it can go to minute level, 8760 hours for many years. Obviously, mostly the production cost model is run for a year. Then there is power flow or load flow analysis, where it looks into what type of transmission planning or distribution planning, what needs to take place. Basically, when should you strengthen, when you should upgrade these transmission and distribution lines. And finally, the transient stability, which is more on the reliability aspect of it. So as you can see, it goes from seconds to years, right? And is there one magic model which actually does everything? No. So it's like a combination of models that is required to address all these questions. How has IRP actually evolved, right, in the US? So initially it was least cost plants, which was identified as least cost resources, but it didn't really take into consideration energy efficiency and demand side management. Now, 1980s, they figured out that there's a fuel price volatility risks, there are issues with respect to generation availability. So states actually started asking the utilities to submit IRPs, right? So now more than 35 states in US are actually requiring utilities to submit IRPs, which needs to be updated every 2 to 4 years. And it's like a 15 to 20 year time horizon. It's non-binding, but then at least there is a process in place. How has the IRP experience been in other countries? So basically, if we see that, again, the updates, it's again 2 to 4 years. But in terms of the goals, it varies slightly, right? So for example, in South Africa, the goal is more towards energy supply security, while in Ghana, resilience is the key. But in Jamaica, if you see, it's more about attracting investments in renewable energy and energy efficiency infrastructure. In all of these, the common part is using scientific tools and approaches, right? What is the context of IRP in India? Now, we have a huge target, 500 gigawatt, and obviously there are challenges with respect to integrating RE at subnational level, and that kind of is also because there is a gap in holistic planning. If we see in the context of what is out there, right, in terms of conducive policy framework. So we do have, National Electricity Plan, electricity amendment rules, there is grid code, there are guidelines for resource adequacy. In fact, some states have also come up with resource adequacy, frameworks and regulations, right? And this is in addition to renewable purchase obligations that Ministry of Power had come out with long time back. And apart from that, we have targets to kind of, raise the share of non-fossil fuel to 500 gigawatt. And it's not an easy thing, but then what we see is because there are resource adequacy regulations and frameworks in place, I think IRP is going to gain much more traction in the coming months and years. Now, in terms of the status of IRP, there are a couple of challenges that I would like to touch upon. Of course, there is no mandate, but one of the main important thing is there is no planning agency at the state level, right? So it's all everything that needs to be done by the utilities. And the most important thing is there's insufficient capacity building in this aspect. So what can we learn from other states? I think this is really important. I would like to touch upon. So what we have seen is we need to incorporate resiliency, right? That's extremely important in IRP plans. Second is also we need to consider the impact of climate change, heat stress on demand projections. Third is on the supply side, when we have thermal power plants, we need to look into water availability, fuel price volatility, those kind of risks. We need to take into account new technologies while we are actually making this integrated resource plans, which includes be it battery storage, be it green hydrogen, small wind turbine, offshore wind. It cannot be just the traditional resources, right? And finally, on the demand side, energy efficiency, demand side management strategies, all these have to be taken into account. So what is the way forward? In no particular order, I would say that yes, using scientific approaches and models, I think that's really important. We need to explore grid flexibility measures that we spoke about, decentralized solutions, new technologies, whatever works, right? It can be like a portfolio of solutions. Third is, it's really important to ensure resource adequacy. We need to ensure that there is, reliability, affordability. And finally, this can all be done because, only if we build that technical capacity on IRP tools, models, and approaches. So that is your bullseye. 50 seconds left, so that's my speech. And I think I finished it in an optimum manner. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandhya. It shows that how important the planning is, right? If you plan it very well, then you can actually achieve it. Good. So now, last but not the least, I would like to invite Christophe Napes. He's from EDF, based in Singapore, please.
So thank you very much. So I have an extra 50 seconds. Yes, so I'm Christophe from EDF, and I'm going to be talking about how 3 examples of ways in which countries in the Asia-Pacific region are coping with the arrival of massive VRE. So just a few words about EDF. So EDF is the national French electric utility. Has quite a strong presence worldwide, 160,000 employees now. and an annual turnover of 140 billion euros. We have a very low carbon footprint thanks to hydro, nuclear, and renewables. So getting to the heart of the subject, you all are aware of what energy transition means and the impact on the grid, transmission grid in particular, but also distribution grid is quite strong. If you look at the graph on the upper right-hand side, you can see from the graphs there that there are many countries where, in particular, this is solar, is increasing very strongly and making very many challenges. And on the lower map, you can see the countries where solar penetration is the highest. So in particular, Vietnam and Australia, but lots of other countries catching up as well. So we're going to focus on 3 countries, Singapore, Japan, and Australia, which all have different situations. These are some of the mechanisms they've been putting into place. I won't go through them, you're familiar with them. We'll see how they're using them. So firstly, Singapore. So Singapore is a small, dense country. It has quite strong ambitions in terms of decarbonization, although you can see that the installed solar capacity has been increasing very strongly. Nonetheless, it remains about 5% of the total generation capacity. And nonetheless, Singapore aims to deploy at least 2 gigawatt peaks by the year 2030. So the system is managed by a national company called Singapore Power. There's a separate system operator called PSO. And PSO is responsible for managing the system, obviously. But I'd like to focus on the right-hand side, where we can see that, in fact, in Singapore, the arrival of massive amounts of PV has not so far been difficult because there's a high level of redundancy in the system. It's very dense. And in fact, proportionally, the PV is not that massive. Also, the combined cycle generators, which are there, are dealing with this quite well. Let's move on to Japan. Japan has a different situation, although you can see in the top right-hand side, the yellow part represents the part of PV and generation. You can see it growing quite strongly. It's reached 31% now. So Japan also has quite a dense, quite a resilient system, but they have needed to put into place certain measures more on a local level. For example, they have two different systems depending on the size of the PV installation. So the one on the left is for higher than 10 kilowatts. So there is curtailment, or curtailment can be imposed for these systems. For smaller than 10 kilowatts, so basically rooftop solar, we're talking about just having as much information as possible so that the system management can be done in real time using smart meters in particular, or something resembling smart meters. In Japan, the DSOs and TSOs are geographical monopolies. However, there is a separation between distribution and transmission. They have, this is an example of Tokyo Electric Company, which has deployed a lot of, as you can see, rather complex diagram, a lot of information technology to try and ensure constant communication. And they have really taken on the idea that the DSO and the TSO must talk constantly in terms of planning and operation. Moving on to Australia. So Australia is yet another example. So a very low density of population. The grid, well, there are 3 grids, in fact. The biggest one is in the southeast, around Sydney and Melbourne and so on. Australia is experiencing a very, very high penetration of renewable energies and solar in particular, with at certain moments, for example, if you look at this graph on the lower right-hand side, you can see that the renewable energy in total represents almost 70% in the middle of the day. This is a daytime during one day. And so this poses a certain number of problems, as you can imagine, with negative loads on certain parts of the grid, including in the distribution grid. So they're trying to deal with this by combining many different approaches. They're also currently testing a kind of marketplace for decentralized energy resources. And if you look at the right-hand top graph, you can see that during the middle of the day when there is the most generation, they're trying to use electric vehicle charging batteries and so on, virtual power plants and demand-side management. The DSO and TSO situation is very complex in Australia. There are many, depending on the states, and some of them are public, private, or a mixture of both. But what we've been seeing is that they are more and more talking to each other despite their different statuses. And this has proved necessary both in the planning stage and also in the operation stage. So if we summarize on the three different countries, different situations going from Singapore, very dense, very stable system, relatively limited impact of the arrival of VRE. Japan, much bigger, still quite stable, quite robust, but having to deal with the arrival of VRE, especially on a very localized level. And Australia, which has a really big challenge overall because of its configuration and the massive arrival of solar. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christoph. Appreciate it. So now we have exactly 30 minutes left. So what I propose is that I would like to invite all the panelists to come and take a seat there. And then being the, I want to try my privilege to have a dialogue with all the panelists first, and then after that we'll open the floor for any Q&A there. So I request all the panelists to please take your seat here. Thank you. Thank you. So what I propose to do is, even though they are all my good friends, but then I will ask them a very, very difficult question to each of them. And then after that, we'll open the floor. But that time, I would like to request you to ask a very simple question, easy questions for them, so that it will be a balanced. So let me start with my own friend, Sajid. I think it was very interesting that you talked about how important the financial management, fiduciary aspects of it, and also what kind of support the ADB is providing, which is very good. But I think you also briefly mentioned that ADB is also providing more and more support, or more and more support is going to the SOEs, and where this challenge is even often more serious in terms of this financial fiduciary governance there. So if you could, what kind of messages that you would like to convey to our countries or to participants about, how can we transform them into more, let's say, good organization, basically.
Yeah, thank you, Jeevan. Yeah, of course, very easy question. No problem with that. Yeah. So just I think in the interest of time, of course, I mean, that is something which is a very comprehensive topic, and a lot of things need to be done. So just quickly summarize, of course, I mean, there are First of all, you need to look at the costs and to bring down the cost. Of course, through investing more in the low-cost generation as well as into the efficiency improvement investments, a lot of that which ADB is also supporting in different countries. And then, of course, I mean, increasing the revenue by enhancing the demand. And of course, as I said earlier, that the single largest factor most of the time is the insufficient tariff, right? So need to have more tariff reforms. Of course, I mean, when we talk about tariff reforms, it's not just that just increase. It has to be cognizant of the affordability as well as the lifeline consumers. So all that, I mean, the effective tariff regime should be the one which will take care of the marginalized communities as well. And then, of course, there will be, of course, I mean, subsidies, they should be targeted, cross subsidies, all these kind of things. So bring down the cost, increase the revenue, that is fine. But the big question still remains that in a lot of cases, like, in India has thousands of crores of regulatory assets. Pakistan has like trillions of rupees of circular debt. So what to do with that, right? So that's the big question, and this is where when we work with different countries, like currently we are working with Sri Lanka and particularly for CEB. So you need to do a lot of whole bunch of reform actions starting from the regulations. Like in Sri Lanka, we have worked closely with the government to revise the Electricity Act that removes the the inefficiencies as well as ensures best practices, governance best practices. And then, of course, I mean, you have to look at the whatever has happened and what is the pile up. So that needs to be dumped somehow. There could be a lot of measures, like government could step in and provide directly equity support or debt equity conversions, or there can be carving out of the non-sustainable liabilities, like in the case of CB. Again, we are doing that. So there will be another organization. So all these kind of things, I mean, of course, bring down the cost and increase the revenue, but still there is a big chunk that still needs to be addressed, and there are a lot of things through which it can be done. Just I would end here that tomorrow we have a session specifically on this, reforms for this CEB. So if anyone interested, please go there. That you will have more details there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sajid. So I also encourage you to go and attend that session as well if you're interested there. So now, Dr. Pirapat, then, you talk about this cross-border interconnection to support the decarbonization. But this session is also, I mean, of course, there are a lot of technical challenges, and there are also a lot of innovations that can bring in and so on. But to come back, to bring you back to the focus of this session, which is more on the governance side of it. But while you are dealing with multiple countries in this interconnection, what are the challenges that you see on this governance? I mean, you kind of touched upon that one, but if you can elaborate that, please.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, as mentioned, there are, of course, technical economic challenges, but I mean, the main issues in this region in Southeast Asia is more on the policy, regulatory frameworks, and the governance, because there are uncertainties in terms of the policies, how we want to take this forwards. And also another one is also a different market structure within Southeast Asia. Only Singapore and Philippines has the electricity market, while the rest, I mean, Vietnam is developing, while the rest is still vertically integrated and under single buyer. So that presents quite a number of challenges in terms of how do you integrate different market structure when you do the cross-border power trade. And that is one of the main challenges that the countries is facing. I also would say that there need to be a more coordinated platform for different countries to work together on this. I mean, one of the things that we highlighted is that as part of the long-term harmonized policy framework, you need to start off to have a body like a task force or a group that dedicated on the cross-border power trades, that to look at what the issues that the countries are facing, because some of the countries, they may be thinking about, because some of the countries, the domestic grid is not still need a lot of development. So, prioritize is on domestic grid. But I think those issues need to be discussed to provide a long-term directions and how do they get support. And if you have a bit more certainty in policies, and that will encourage on investment as well. Because one of the issues is that who's going to build this, who's going to own it, and how do they get remunerated? Because many utilities in Southeast Asia have limited finance, so it need to support from private investors, and private investors asking the questions: what do they gonna get back? What in terms of remunerations? What ownership structure is going to be? So those are the main things that the stakeholders in these regions need to consider. As mentioned, we provide some recommendation based on what you can do now and what should be the priorities in the short term, and what could be done on a medium term and a longer term. One of the things that has been highlighted is to increase the expertise within these regions, so it relies less on external regions. Of course, we'll learn from other regions, but having the expertise within the regions is one of the key factors that can support the development.
Yeah, thank you again. We can have further discussion on this one also, but let me move on to Tarindo. And I know I really rushed you to finish your presentation in 8 minutes, but I really want you to highlight some of the innovations that LECO has done, especially on the governance and also on the planning side of it, because that's the focus of this session as well.
Well, in terms of clean energy transition, I mean, so far we have dealt with the randomness and the intermittence or the variance of the load side. The conventional power systems got enough and sufficient capacity for us to deal with these demand side variations. But unfortunately, when we are going with when we are going ahead with the transition, so far the renewable energy sources also got there are certain level of randomness, so that the intermittency should be the match and mix with the demand side. So you have one side, you have a variation and the randomness of the load side, and on the other side you have the randomness and the variation of the source side as well. So intermittency. So how to get this between two and get a more how to foster a good bridge between two of these elements would be the innovation would be the most economical or as well as the approachable solution. So in technical innovation, we have done lots of projects in our network, and fortunately, being not just being a development bank, but also a knowledge bank as well, ADB supported us establishing lots of regional research centers in our university systems. So we have done quite a lot of researchers how to deal with the intermittency as well as this randomness nature of the renewable energy sources, as well as not particularly in the technology, but in planning perspective as well. Of course, in order to mitigate the inherent issues of the renewable energy, and if you have to transfer our networks into a cleaner and just a network, so that we have to have sort of technical innovations as well as the policy and regulatory innovations as well. From technical point of view, we have developed couple of microgrids in our systems, which are grid tied. So we are piloting how we can integrate more renewable energy into our networks through through innovative business models. Then second thing, we are again trying to develop certain elements that how we measure and take certain decisions in our distribution network, so that our entire network is visible for us to predict and operate more cleaner manner than the conventional way of doing it.
Thank you. I think we'll talk more about that in the reception later in the evening, okay? So now let me move on to Mr. Mohiuddin Ahmed. In your presentation, you highlighted how the Bangladesh demand will increase and supply and so on. But at the same time, we have also learned that there is a interconnection with India, and now also discussion with interconnection with Nepal, sorry, even the power trade with Nepal as well. So I think regardless of where the power comes from, at least you need to include that in your planning process there. You have already difficulties and challenges within the country, but then you also need to think about how to import or export to other countries. How do you get that one into your planning?
Actually, in my presentation, thank you. In my presentation, I have give them the interconnection now at present. All the three interconnection is with the Indian grid. So, but our government had decided to import some power from Bhutan and Nepal through India. This dialogue is going on, and but 50 megawatt power from Nepal it will be come very soon. It is finalized. So very soon we'll import 50 megawatt power. It will be also through the Indian power, that is the HVDC block. Because HVDC, I have shown you that we are importing 100 megawatt, 1000 megawatt, but 1000 megawatt it is in the Indian grid, the generation capacity. But we receive around 948, something like this. So though our capacity is more than 1000 megawatt, so by this time we have signed a contract with the Nepal. We are very soon we will import the power from Nepal 50 megawatt. I think it will break the ice. I think so. So then in future definitely dialogue is going on with the Bhutan, Nepal, but you know our country is not directly connected with Nepal, Bhutan. So Indian Indian consent also needed in this regard. So dialogue is going on. I think hopefully that in near future will import from the Bhutan, Nepal also. Anything more?
No, I think we'll talk later
Okay.
during the reception. Or maybe there's some more
Okay,
questions
thank you.
coming. Yeah, good, thank you. I know because all of these things are very loaded questions, we can continue discussing for hours, okay? So now moving on to Sandhya, you very nice presentation again, especially on the importance of the planning, and also you talked about, this IRP there. But my question to you is, I mean, India is a very big country, right? I mean, some of the states are very advanced. Some states are kind of still catching up. So it will be very difficult to make a generic statement about India because India is so big there. But having said that, you know, how is the why is, are all the states using this IRP right now or not? If they are not using, maybe they are using something else, but still maybe planning, or you think that there is no proper planning at all? If they have to do the proper planning, what are the challenges that you see, and then what can be done to address them?
Thank you so much, Jeevan. So I think planning is, again, it could seem like an abstract word, right? But the idea is, you know, every state in India it has a very diverse, you know, mix, both in terms of supply and in terms of the end user consumer demand. So one thing that we see is, you know, utilities actually have the challenge of I mean, what the challenge that they face on a daily basis is to meet their, you know, supply and demand on a daily basis, right? So it's like a day-to-day kind of an operation that they need to think of. So for them to actually, you know, do planning, say in for the short term, medium term, long term, that itself is quite an exercise. So, so I would say that the utilities are still running the grid, right? So I mean, they know the things. They are, you know, using you know, first principles, and you know, they are somehow managing the grid right now. But then I think this long-term kind of planning exercises would just like a tool and approach that can actually make their lives easier. And it gives that scientific kind of an approach where actually they can track their decisions, you know. So in some states, I would say that they're using some kind of tools. In some places, it's just purely first principles. But then, you know, somehow the grid is running. So I think, you know, they are doing a fabulous job. I would say that the utility and the state load dispatch centers are doing a fabulous job in maintaining the grid, you know, where we don't have, you know, load shedding, where we, you know, we actually are able to, you know, meet the supply and demand at, you know, every minute of the day. But then, yes, going forward, when there are more renewables in the grid, when we have the issue of distributed energy resources, when we have electric vehicles, you know, everything is going to change. And with the dynamic changing demand patterns, with quickly evolving technologies, with issues with, you know, climate risks, you know, heat stress, I think all these are going to kind of have a heavy impact in terms of how much the supply and demand should be. And that's why the planning exercises become very important. Now, the second important thing here is challenge is there is no planning agency at the state level, right? It's all being done by, either the utility or the state load dispatch centers. And, in this case, even there is a limited role of RE nodal agencies. So it's really important to have, maybe a dedicated state planning cell. And that could probably help in easing the situation. There should also be research and innovation centers, right, hubs, which can actually do these resource adequacy studies and IRP planning exercises, because definitely the government agencies are quite stretched. So I think that's going to be really important. And again, in terms of the data, right, there is humongous amount of data that is going to be generated, both on the supply and demand side. If you're talking about a minute-wise, matching of supply and demand, and someone needs to sit and actually evaluate it. Someone needs to do that on a daily basis to understand what will be that least cost dispatch. I think one of the things my fellow colleague also mentioned was, merit order dispatch versus the take or pay contract. So, how should the power purchase agreements, the long-term power purchase agreements, how they should be designed, whether we can go for markets, what should be those market mechanisms that can actually help in optimum power procurement. So I think these are all the challenges that one is facing. In terms of the opportunity, I think the planning can actually help us in understanding, what is that level of renewables that the system can take in, right? How we can, utilize the stranded capacities, right? And finally, how we can actually harness these new technologies, because that is quickly evolving. So that's extremely important. So I think planning will help in all of this, easing the situation, I would say, for the utilities.
Thank you. So now let me very quickly go to Christoph. I mean, you showed these examples of Singapore, Japan, and Australia. I mean, these are advanced countries and so on. So I think we expect that the system there is much more advanced compared to many other countries as well. But you also highlighted what are the challenges they are facing. My question to you is, now there's a lot of discussion going on for integrating grids. Okay, so now let's say we have countries like Singapore, let's say, which is trying to address, connect with other neighboring countries, but the other neighboring countries may not have that kind of good system in place. So when you're discussing about variable renewable energy, we have a challenge within the country, but then you are also trying to integrate that with another country while promoting VRE. So, any thoughts?
Yeah, so clearly interconnecting countries is a good way of helping with VRE, and that was clearly demonstrated by DNV in the study. There are a lot of challenges though, and the challenges are not so much technical. If you look at subsea cables, for example, it's a technology that's well proven. So unless you go below 1,500 meters right now, you can lay subsea cables. But one of the challenges we have is the actual manufacturing of subsea cables is very constrained right now because of offshore wind. So the deadlines are getting longer, the prices are going up. So if anybody is thinking of starting up a company, I would suggest starting up a subsea cable manufacturing. That's a good business right now. The other challenge is not technical, but more financial, and it's to do with these structures. Had we financed them, they're very expensive, they cost billions, and but they do last 100 years or more. So I think we need to be creative in terms of between IFIs such as ADB, commercial banks, governments, and private equity, how we can combine that in a creative way so that we can get the money in to invest these billions.
Good, thank you. In the interest of time, let me open the floor for if you have any questions or observations. Don't be shy. Okay, we have two people there. Okay, so why don't you go first? Let's collect the questions and then I will come back to the panelists. Just introduce yourself very, very briefly, and then since we have very limited time, just focus on the question, short introduction, who you are, and then whom the question is related to, and then I will move on to the next one. Please go ahead.
Sounds good. Thanks for the presentation, everyone. I'm Arne van Stiphout from Agora Energiewende. My question, well, I was going to ask it to to the representatives of Sri Lanka and of India, but as you said, we can ask difficult questions of ADB today, so I'm going to do that a bit. What was sprinkled throughout all of the presentations was the need for the skills to do this. And I think both at the utility level, particularly at the distribution level, but also the overseeing government bodies, this is a challenge. And so ADB is a Finance Plus organization. I'm wondering what your plans are for building the capacity in the region. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
Dan Millison. I'm a part-time consultant for ADB and also work in the advanced conductor business part-time. So my question was for DNV, that 3.75 million kilometers of transmission, is that all new build? And if not, did you consider reconductoring? Benchmark study from the US just came out earlier this year. We can get 80% of the capacity we need for clean energy targets in the US just by reconductoring. No new lines necessary. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other question? One more? Okay, yeah, please.
Hi, my name is Jisun Han. I'm heading up the energy team in Asia for Dutch Development Bank, FMO. We are a private sector investor, so my key point is that what would unlock private sector investment in TND? Just your main key takeaway, I think, from anyone who wants to volunteer to answer.
Okay, thank you. So I think we probably are okay with these three questions for now. And we also only 5 minutes are left there. So maybe from Dr. Pirapat, maybe the one question was directed to you. Maybe why don't you respond that first?
Yeah, I understand the question is about the length that coming from our study, right? As mentioned, this one, we put some constraints on it, but we just want to highlight that taking out all these constraints, what are of course there are some constraints, but we want to highlight, quantify in terms of the benefits, just to show that if you go and have the regional coordinations between different countries, you have to invest more in the grid infrastructure. That's the length that will be required. But of course, in 2050, there's going to become some constraints, as we have mentioned already. But those one is just, we want to highlight that if we want to achieve that, there are challenges in terms of finance, in terms of regulations, and in terms of other constraints like the lack of the expertise that I mentioned in these regions. And of course, the supply chain. One of the recommendations and one of the challenges that has been mentioned when we discuss with the stakeholders about the study is that there needs to develop also the local supply chains within the Southeast Asian regions, because that was one of the key challenges that the companies, those developers that we talked to. As mentioned, the assumptions that we made, just we want to highlight what are the full benefits of the cross-border interconnections that it could provide. And of course, there are challenges and priorities that need to be addressed in order to achieve that. We're not saying that this is going to be the case in 2050, but we just want to highlight, the challenges and what should be the action plan that key stakeholders should address. Hope that addressed some of the questions. And also the one thing, also the assumptions that we made of the interconnection is that in the real term, it might not require that amount of the length of the transmission, because we assume that there's only one connection point in each of the countries, which is in the central area. But in reality, of course, you're not going to connect from one central of one locations to another. So it's most likely going to be shorter, but we just want to highlight, these are the length that, based on these assumptions, without, the constraints that we assume.
Thank you. So there are no other questions related to skills, and then how do we bring in how to motivate private sector? Anybody would like to take that up? Sajid,
okay.
You said that ADB can do a lot, so what are you doing with skill?
Private sector, and also before that, I think the question was that what ADB is doing on the capacity building. So just to quickly summarize, ADB has what we call the technical assistance, or the TA in short. So our current, the active TA portfolio is around $2 billion. And it has a whole lot of programs, including the transaction TAs, where we support the EAIAs in preparation of various products, various projects, like their technical feasibility as well as the financial and economic feasibilities, and also the safeguard considerations we support in that. And then also we have what we call the knowledge support transaction technical assistance, KSTAs, which help in different ways, like production of knowledge products, various studies with research papers, and also the hardcore, the trainings, and the various other technical support or the capacity building programs. So that's on the capacity building. And then coming to the question on how to support the private sector investment. Of course, I mean, there are a lot of things. First of all, sometimes there are some regulatory constraints. So that can be, ADB can support in working together with the governments in removing those bottlenecks and streamlining the legislation which can support the private sector investment. And lastly, because we already ran out of time, just one key thing, of course, is the bankability, as I mentioned briefly in my presentation as well. For private sector, of course, I mean, they need to see the bankability of the project. So for making any projects, bankable, financial sustainability of the SOEs is very important. And of course, I mean, again, that's a big topic which needs a whole lot of measures to improve the financial sustainability. But quick fixes, like I mentioned in my presentation, ADB is providing sovereign funding, which is actually used as guarantee financing to leverage the private sector investments.
Thank you. You want to very quickly, we're kind of ran out of time, but very quick, yeah.
Actually, to mention about the innovations and capacity building, actually ADB supported us a lot in terms of capacity building, because we connected our first 1,000 megawatts free of charge. That's a free mileage that we get, around 20% of installed capacity of Sri Lanka. But next 1,000 would be need much innovation. So ADB supported us developing many research lab in terms of innovations and renewable energy. So there are certain microgrid labs that have developed within Sri Lanka. So I think they're doing quite a good job. So it will be sort of a regional labs, and it will not just a single labs which only located in Sri Lanka. So those are interconnected labs where India, Sri Lanka, and other countries can share and disseminate their knowledge, whatever they develop out of whatever the research output out of these labs. Yeah.
Doing good. So I think one of the asked me about the capacity enhancement of Bangladesh transmission line. So in the Bangladesh, I have shown that it is a very densely populated area. So it is very difficult to construct new line. In the last 6 years, we are introducing a high temperature, low sec conductor, and it is we are using the ACCC conductor. It is called the element conductor composite core. And this we are using the same diameter conductor, but the capacity is increased, and we are very much. We have already completed almost 1,500 circuit kilometer line, and now also some other project is going on. And our experience with this new conductor is very nice. I think it enhanced the capacity almost 80 to 90% of the the performance of this is a very alternative solution of the enhancement of one transmission line with the new conductor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I know we wanted to have a more discussion on this one, very interesting topic, but I'm so sorry that we have to close this one. There is a coffee break now from 3:30 to 4 o'clock, and then at 4 o'clock, my colleague, very good friend Hong Peng, will be chairing session 2. I think it's in this room, right? Yeah, so in this room, please go out, have a cup of tea, coffee, and then please do come back to our second session here on this one. And then after that, we have on the 6th in the morning, there are 2 sessions related to this thematic track, and I really encourage you to come and attend those sessions as well. So for now, let me thank our speakers for keeping their time and also making their presentation. I really appreciate that one. And thank you all the participants for joining this one. Thank you.